Hey folks, and welcome back to Fireside Farms. For those of you new here, my name is Megan, and today we are starting my favorite crop to grow, which is peppers. And I'm not talking about like black pepper that you use as a spice. I'm talking about chili peppers, bell peppers, those kinds of peppers, capsicum species. If you guys didn't know, I live in New Mexico, which is colloquially termed the chili capital of the world. Due to Hatch, New Mexico, which is a stone's throw away. And they produce, if you've ever seen in the store, because I've since come to realize that like no one actually knows what green chili is. Chase, my boyfriend, is from Missouri. And if you ask for green chili in a dish up there, they will give you green bell pepper, which is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the Hatch green chili, which is actually spicy, also red chili, both of which are very prevalent in Mexican cuisines and in New Mexican cuisines. I've learned they're kind of specific to New Mexican cuisine, but I digress. Today I'm gonna be starting my pepper seeds, and I'm gonna take you guys along with me, tell you what I'm growing, and talk to you about peppers. So to get started, I'm just gonna quickly go over all of the peppers I'm growing, which ones I'm not growing and why, and then I'm gonna get started seeding. I'm so excited. So I think in total, I think I counted this. Okay, so I have 17 varieties of peppers that I'm growing this year, which is more than I did last year. So I'll start with the ones I haven't grown yet, because I grew several chilies last year, and I will be regrowing most of those, actually all of those. But I've also got new ones that I haven't tried, and I'm super excited to share with you guys. The first one is the Peach Carolina Reaper. This is an extremely hot pepper, the Reaper is. This is a different take on the Reaper. It's supposed to be slightly fruity-er, but it's still going to be very hot, I think. Oh, it says 1.5 million Scoville units, which, in case you guys didn't know, heat in peppers is measured on the Scoville scale. So the higher the number on the Scoville scale, the hotter they are. This Carolina Reaper is 1.5 million Scoville units, and just for reference, a jalapeno falls somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 Scoville units. So this is pretty hot. The next one that I haven't grown before is the Sugar Rush Peach pepper. This is an heirloom variety. It's supposed to have a really sweet tropical flavor, and from everyone that I've heard that grows this, they make a really good peach salsa out of it. Well, peach pepper salsa. So I'm super excited to grow this. I love me some salsas. The third one that I have not planted before is this jalapeno. I got this as an extra seed from Seeds and Such. It's supposed to be some sort of draping, like you can pot it up kind of pepper. So like hanging baskets, it's where it's most often used. I have started some seeds already from this, and they are on my grow shelf, but I'm going to also start some for the garden just to see how they perform, and also because why not? And another pepper I have is this Fire and Ice, which is a smaller ornamental pepper, but it is edible. They kind of stick straight up like this. I got this as a free seed as well from Seeds and Such, so I've never grown this. I don't know how it's gonna do, but I'm gonna try it. I only have 5 seeds for this free seed packet, so not too many plants. Fifth one that I have not grown before is the Habanero pepper. So a habanero is a pretty hot pepper. Obviously, most people are familiar with the habanero pepper. This one is supposed to retain all of the flavor of the habanero, but none of the heat, which is great because we've got 3 kids and they don't like super hot things. So this hopefully will bring all that flavor to a salsa without any of the heat. The last one is a pepper chibi pepper. I grew banana peppers last year. These are kind of similar, but I did not like the way the banana peppers pickled. So I'm going to try growing the pepperoncinis and see if they pickle a little better. I just didn't like the flavor on the banana peppers. Now for the seeds that I have grown before and I'm going to be growing again, and I'll give you guys the name, the characteristics, and then how they did for me in my climate. So the first one is this Thai hot pepper. It's a very small, teeny tiny pepper, and the plant grows very bush-like and just spits out hundreds of these little tiny, super hot chili peppers. I'm sure everyone is familiar with a Thai hot pepper. It's obviously in Thai cuisine, and they're usually like small, wrinkly little red peppers that you pick out of your Oriental food that you order. They are excellent dried. So we don't eat a whole lot of these fresh just because the flavor is different than the normal cuisine I cook. But when you dehydrate them and then powder them, they make a very, very good spicy, just kind of like crushed red pepper that you would put on a pizza, except way hotter. So we really enjoy this dried. I'm only going to be growing 1 or 2 plants of these Thai hots just because they are so prolific that, I mean, it's a waste of space to be putting in more plants than that when I won't use all of those peppers. Next is the Shishito pepper. This is an absolute staple in this household. We eat these like candy. They are excellent just sauteed in some tallow or butter and dressed with salt and pepper. They're actually often eaten as an appetizer at most restaurants that you can find them. The plants are very prolific, and I will also only be maybe planting like 2 or 3 of these out, just because many more plants than that, you just have peppers that you end up not eating and they're taking up space. Because this probably shoots out just as many as the Thai hot, and they're way bigger. So a couple plants of these, but they're an absolute staple here. Now this pimiento de Padron pepper has become one of my favorite hot peppers to grow just because of how it performed last year in my garden for me. So when I transplanted my plants out last year, I did a couple test plants because I wasn't sure if the last frost was done. So I put 1 Padron pepper out into the garden and it ended up freezing a couple nights later. And this plant survived the freeze, and peppers are notorious for hating the cold. But this guy not only survived the frost that it went through, it ended up being the largest plant I had and produced the most peppers of all of the pepper plants that I'd planted. So I will be starting some seeds from this packet, but I saved a ton of seeds from that plant last year, which I am hoping are viable seeds, and I am very excited to continue on that generation of plant and hopefully get those same genetics that I got last year from that amazing plant that I had. The next one up is a banana pepper. I'm probably only gonna transplant out 1 or 2 of these. I don't love them preserved. So last year I did a lot of dehydrating and pickling and canning of the peppers that I grew. This one didn't turn out so well. I did not like it pickled, I did not like it dried, and I did not like it fermented. So it was really only good for fresh eating, and then beyond the fresh eating, it doesn't have like a spicy flavor, which I like. So it makes for a really good bell pepper substitute. The walls are kind of thick, so if you need that like bell pepper crunch, this is pretty good. But it produces better than a bell pepper because bell peppers take quite a while to get to good size, and then the plant, I mean, you only get a couple bell peppers out of the entire plant. But this will continue to produce peppers all season, just one right after the other. And although it is a conical long shape, the walls are pretty thick, and you can easily substitute this for a bell pepper in a recipe. So I'm gonna grow just a couple of these. But like I said, I didn't like any way of preserving them, so I don't want to waste space for peppers that I'm not going to eat. Next one up is a Georgia flame pepper. This pepper is supposed to be hot. It says hot on the packet. I didn't find that it was very spicy, though I do have a really high spice tolerance. It's not really good for eating like a bell pepper. It has really thin walls. So it's a large pepper, but it's very, very thin, and I didn't find it to be too spicy. I'm sure someone out there likes them. I don't love this pepper. I'm going to grow 1 or 2 plants, but I'm not gonna dedicate a large amount of garden space to it. Now this Bikino Yellow, I said previously I wasn't gonna grow any of these. I think I'm going to at least put 1 in my garden just because why not? And I have more space than I did last year. The only problem that I found last year with this pepper was I didn't know what to do with it. So it's not spicy at all. It's actually kind of sweet and it has a slightly tropical flavor. And the plant throws off a ton of these peppers. The problem is they're so small that you have to gather. I mean, you're sitting there for 10 minutes just picking off pepper after pepper, and they're tiny. They're probably about the size of the tip of my finger. And then by the end of your harvest, which is taking you an hour, by the way, you just have this bowl of small peppers that you have no idea what to do with. I suppose it would be good as an appetizer, but honestly, the amount of time that it took to grow them and then harvest them, it's kind of a waste, and I would rather eat Shishitos. So I'm going to grow 1 or 2 plants just because I kind of want to experiment. I heard they're good in a salsa, but honestly, I think it's more trouble than it's worth to grow those, and they're more of a novelty than a food producing vegetable. So I only have 2 varieties of bell peppers. I'm not a huge fan of growing bell peppers. I do love eating like stuffed bell peppers or putting them in a salad, but growing them seems kind of like a waste of time to me unless you can dedicate a large amount of space specifically for that purpose, like for market or for selling or something beyond eating, because bell peppers take so long to mature. And like I had talked about with the banana pepper, there are other varieties of sweet peppers that can function like a bell, but not take so long to grow. And as for these mini bells, they aren't really big enough. They do grow faster than a full-size bell, but they're just so small that you can't really do anything besides chop them up and put them in a salad or a dish. They're not big enough for stuffing. So I didn't find a lot of use out of these mini chocolate bells, but I'm gonna start a couple seeds anyways. And I should preface this by I am also providing seedlings to friends and family. So even if I don't grow some of these, which I'm sure I'll at least dedicate 1 plant in my garden for each of these peppers, but I am going to be giving away a lot of these seedlings, which is why I'm starting all of these seeds. The next one that I have is, I taped it shut. I can't untape it, but it's called a Fuego, and I'll put that name right there. It is very, very similar to a jalapeno. It's got thick walls. It has the same conical shape, but it is supposed to be hotter. I didn't have any success with this last year. The plant threw off a couple, but suffered from something. It just didn't grow very well. So I'm going to give this another try. I also don't have any other jalapeno variety to grow, so this is my only one. But I hope this does better than last year. And the last 2, which are very near and dear to my heart. These are the green chilies that I was speaking of. So this is from Sandia Seed Company, which is a New Mexican seed company. And both red and green chilies are hot. Technically, you can grow a green chili plant and then allow the peppers to mature to a red color and that be red chili. I'm not quite sure why these are classified differently or if they're actually the same plant, but this might be, these red chili seeds just might dehydrate better. For Hispanic cuisine, when you eat red chili, it's actually usually dehydrated, and then to make the actual red chili sauce, you rehydrate those chilies. So this just might be better for dehydrating and this better for fresh eating because green chilies are eaten fresh. Not sure. I'm still growing both of them. But that is it for the pepper list today. If you guys survive through that, I have a couple more seeds that I'm just gonna be starting early. I'm also starting 2 different types of bunching onions. Just because I like onions and it's a cool weather crop, so I can start them now. I have never grown this before, but I will be also growing safflower, and this particular variety, the Corrales azafran, originated in New Mexico, in Corrales. So the flowers can be used as a coloring spice or dried to brew tea, and you can make a dye out of them as well. So I'm interested to see how this turns out. I don't know anything about safflower other than it's commonly used as a spice. I'll also be starting St. John's wort. This will be my 3rd time attempting to grow this. I actually started some seeds a couple weeks ago with you guys, and these St. John wort never came up. So I don't know if I have a bad seed bag. I don't like to think that. I usually assume it's user error, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm gonna try and grow this for the 3rd time. And then last but not least, I have lemon balm, which should be easy to grow. I've grown several plants in the mint family. I just ran out of lemon balm seeds for some reason, so I'm gonna just start some of these real quick. So if you hadn't heard, I finally broke down and bought Bootstrap Farmer seed starting pots. I have several of these Bootstrap Farmer seedling trays, 10-20 seedling trays. And I wasn't gonna purchase these because I didn't really have the funds to be wasting on pots, but I did an inventory before seed starting and realized that I didn't have enough pots to fill all the plants I had planned to grow this year. So instead of buying cheap Amazon ones that notoriously break and I'm just gonna have to replace again, I just splurged and spent the money on these, which should last me several seasons because they are very hardy and good. I'll link Bootstrap Farmer's website below. I'm not affiliated or anything. It's just a great product that I really recommend. And for my soil, as usual, I'll be using Fox Farm Ocean Forest. I also mixed in some specific seed starting potting soil. Not for any particular reason, but I've had it for about a year now. It's mostly dried out and I just need to get rid of it. So when you're starting seeds, you don't necessarily have to use a seed starting mix. Seed starting mixes are very good to start seeds in. They're light, they're fluffy. They usually have a lot of vermiculite or perlite, which are these little white spots in here. And that helps make the soil fluffy and light so that these very, very new tiny plants' roots can easily dive down. You don't want your soil too thick and bogged down that the roots can't even grow. And a lot of people will also talk about sterile seed starting mixes, or they'll even grab their seed starting mix and put it in boiling water or bake it in the oven to sterilize it. I've never had a problem just using bagged soil to start my seeds, and there's nothing wrong with sterilizing your seed starting mix. There are many soil-borne diseases that can affect young seedlings, and if you're growing on a very large scale where you can't afford to have any plants die off in their seedling stage, more power to you. I have never done that. I think it's a lot of work, and honestly, I've never had a problem just using regular old potting soil to start my seeds. Although I will put in the caveat that I do use a pretty good potting soil to start my seedlings. Another reason I don't use a specific seed starting mix, like a sterile seed starting mix, is because it just requires you to separate out or up pot your seedlings faster. When you plant a seed, that seed has all of the nutrients that little plant needs to send a shoot up to get sunlight and send roots down to get water and nutrients. But after that little seedling has exhausted the nutrients in its seed, if there's nothing in the surrounding soil, like if it was a sterile seed starting mix, you're gonna have to either start fertilizing or up pot to, you know, more nutrient dense soil. This way, I don't have to do that as quickly, because when this plant emerges, there are plenty of nutrients in this potting soil that I'm using. So it's just a little bit less work. Okay, so I am going to start probably in the order that I went through. So let's start with the Peach Carolina Reaper. So growing pepper seeds requires heat. And pepper plants actually require heat. That's why they do so well in New Mexico, because it is very hot here. But most people, when they start pepper seeds, will use a heat mat. I do not, but I do have a workaround around the heat mat, which is why I'm successful without it. So I'm starting seeds. Today is February 13th. So it's cold outside. It's actually a very windy and moderately rainy day. It's probably, I think the high is in the 50s. Normally, this would not be a good temperature to start pepper seeds in, especially because I keep my house kind of cold because I'm cheap and I don't want to use the heater. But what I do is I have my grow shelf right next to a southern facing window. So especially in the winter time, because the sun is like on its, the earth on its axis has the sun coming from the south. I get full sunlight in that window and it actually warms the room up a lot. Not to mention my hydroponics tower is in there, and with all those lights, if I leave the bedroom door closed, no joke, that room gets to like 80 degrees with like 100% humid. That's a bit much. Probably very, very humid. It's not good for my house and the walls, but it is very good for starting pepper seeds. So actually, I don't need to use a heat mat in the winter when I start my pepper seeds, because I just have the grow shelf right next to the window. It gets the full sun all day long and that room is very warm. So I've never had a problem germinating my pepper seeds. But if you have a cooler house, and you're maybe, especially if you're using a greenhouse, because a greenhouse is not going to be that warm if you live in a cooler climate. If you're growing and it's just not warm enough and your stuff isn't germinating, you may need a heat mat. Now, I've never used one, so I'm not going to link one down below just because I've never used it. So I'm not gonna give you a product that I haven't fully vetted. But you can buy them, I think, pretty cheap. Or if you just have like an old heating pad, you can use that. But pepper seeds do require some heat, supplemental heat, to germinate if you're in a very cold climate. You know what? Before I plant another different seed, let me label this first one, because I'll screw this up. So how I'm sowing my seeds is the multi-sow method, which means I just put 5 pepper seeds in this one pot. And I've gone over this before, I'll link that video above. But several seedlings are gonna come out of the top of this pot. And what's gonna happen is once they get their first set of true leaves, I'm going to take this pot and separate out all these seedlings and then put them each in their own individual pots. Benefit of doing this multi-sow method is that I can use less soil for several plants rather than doing 1 reaper, 2 reaper, 3 reaper, 4 reaper, 5 reaper, and using 5 pots and times the soil. I can grow all these quickly in this one pot, and then once they get big enough to transplant, put them in individual pots, and you just waste less soil doing that, especially because I buy kind of pricey soil to start my seeds in. It's just a better method. You can't do that with all types of plants. Tomatoes, peppers, you can do that with, but plants that don't like to be transplanted, like squash, cucumber, beans, peas, you do not want to use this method with them, because when you separate them out, you end up pulling apart roots and you can damage roots, and those plants that don't like to be transplanted won't recover very well. They may die or be stunted, and it's just not worth the hassle. So pepper seeds want to be planted about 1/4 inch deep. Generally, as a rule, you want to plant all your seeds about twice as deep as they are wide. So take one of these pepper seeds, see how wide it is, and you want to plant that seed that deep. So 1/4 inch, not too deep, but you do want it covered with soil. Honestly, if you're in doubt of how deep you should plant a seed, I would always err on the side of more towards the surface, because if you plant a seed too deep and it sends its roots down first to look for nutrients, and then it sends the seedling up to find the light, if that seed is buried too deep, it's not going to have enough energy to break through the top of that soil and find the light. So if you're in doubt, you just always want to plant shallower rather than deeper. But most seed packets, if not all seed packets, will have the general depth that you want to be putting these seeds into the soil. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. So according to the NMSU, New Mexico State University Extension Office, which is my closest extension office, also they're experts in all things peppers. They've created several varieties of peppers, which I will try and show pictures or link somewhere. So the plants grow best between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. They'll just be at their peak that way. And they say that the peppers may not set blossoms past 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know how true that is. All of the pepper plants that I have grown and successfully grown year after year repeatedly set fruit above 90 degrees. I mean, in the summertime, we don't get below 90 degrees Fahrenheit here, so it is always very hot. The only time I have seen my pepper plant suffer was in cooler temperatures. And they do not like cold temperatures. You never want to transplant these out, either purposefully or accidentally, if there's going to be a frost. And really, the plants may suffer long-term if you just set them out too early. Now, I don't have this problem, so I can't really speak on it or relate, but I've seen several channels where they have had their peppers just not produce very well for the year, and they figured out that if they just plant them later, like in late April or May, they do better with the heat that comes later on in those months. Like I said, it gets super hot here very quickly. I'm in the 90s in April, and my last frost is in April as well. So I've never had a problem growing peppers. I'm sorry, I just can't relate. But I can definitely say they don't like the cold. Hence, that's why you may need to use a heat mat to get them started. And definitely if you live in a cooler climate, like anywhere but here, then absolutely start your peppers. If you're gonna direct seed them outdoors, start them way weeks after the last frost. And goodness, these are tiny. There's only 5 of them. But start your peppers, if you're gonna start them outdoors, far after the last chance of frost. And then if you're gonna start them indoors, they typically take a little bit longer to grow to size, especially in obviously the cooler temperatures that we're starting in, because it's February, and generally houses are just cooler in the February. You have more luck just starting them earlier than your other plants. That's why I'm starting these pepper seeds today, and I'm not starting everything today. It's just to give them a little bit of a head start. Even though I don't need it, I'll just have peppers sooner. Now, if you guys are familiar with Mexican cuisine, or if you live in New Mexico or Arizona or Texas, You may be asking why I'm not growing the typical chili peppers, like serranos or paprika or poblanos or Anaheim or Mirasol chilies. Frankly, all of those chilies, although they are good fresh, in Mexican cuisine and a lot of the things that I grow chili peppers for, like red chilies to dehydrate, green chili to roast and freeze, because I do cook a lot of Mexican cuisine here in the house. We live like almost right next to Mexico, so I was raised on a lot of Mexican hot, spicy cuisine. It's just a hell of a lot cheaper to just buy them in the store, honestly. In case you guys didn't know, like ancho chilies are just dried poblanos. And like chili Colorado is, the Colorado seasoning comes from dried Anaheim peppers. And with all of the, you know, mom and pop local Mexican stores, like a lot of this grows locally. A lot of this is shipped in for very, very cheap. And it's just cheaper, it's more cost effective and less time consuming if I buy those things in a bag. Like the amount of Anaheim chilies I would have to grow to dry them all and make chili Colorado would take way too much space in my garden than if I just waited till next year and bought a bag of, you know, dried Anaheim peppers or Mirasol chilies, which you dehydrate and it becomes guajillo. It's just easier to purchase some of those things than grow them. So I do like growing red and green chilies, even though I live so close to Hatch, New Mexico. I do love growing them, and the green chilies that I grew last year, I only had about 16 plants. But from those 16 plants, the production was great, and I still have frozen roasted green chili in my freezer, which has lasted me up until now, and will probably last me through until these green chili plants start producing. So some things I will grow here, like red and green chili, jalapenos and stuff. But really what I want to focus on in my garden is stuff that I eat a lot of, red and green chili, and then things that I can't find in the store. I can't find Sugar Rush Peach at my local Walmart or Sprouts. And I definitely can't find Habanero peppers at my local store. So if I'm going to dedicate a space, I do weigh the pros and cons of how easily I can find it, how much it's gonna cost me, and how much do I actually use it. So let me finish up seeding these pots and then we'll get back with you guys when we're done. I figure I should clue you guys into another way I seed. I don't always make divots into the soil and then drop the seeds in. Honestly, that takes a while. So a lot of times I just put the seeds on top of the soil and then cover the soil with about what would be, in the case of peppers, a 1/4 inch of soil. So let me show you guys. So for these chocolate bell pepper seeds, I'm just going to drop them on top and just lightly press them into the soil. So dropped, pressed, and then I'm going to take a handful of soil, and as I have it in my hand, I'm going to do this because I don't want any chunks. So I'm just going to lightly spread it over about to where a 1/4 inch of soil would be, and if I get any chunks on top, I'm going to break them up, because you don't want chunks stopping the seedling from coming out of the top of the soil. And then once it's about there, just lightly pat it down to set it, and you're there. But when you're starting like 100 seeds, it can take a while to just put a divot in, put the seed, cover it up. So it's the lazy man's way of doing it. All right guys, so I have finished the seeds. It is dark outside. But I wanted to show you the finished product, and also I need the record keeping for myself. So here we have all of the pepper seeds along with the St. John's wort and safflower, red and yellow bunching onions, and then these green tabs are going to be the pepper seeds that I saved from last year's garden. So I only saved 5 different pepper seeds, and they were from the best peppers that I had, the ones that I actually wanted to save and want more of the same in the future. So I have banana peppers. This is the chocolate mini bell. I did save some large chocolate mini bell pepper seeds from the largest ones that had come up. Like I said, I don't love bell peppers, but I'm gonna see if these turn out any bigger than the originals. My favorite, the Padron pepper, some Thais, and some Shishitos. So all of those seeds were saved from the most prolific plants with the largest fruits, and the seeds were saved from the largest fruit. So hopefully I will be able to tell a difference this year between the ones I saved and the originals from the seed packets, but we will see. This will be my own little experiment. I've never really compared it in the past when I've saved seeds, so I'm super excited to share this with you guys. And I think plant genetics are amazing, and I'm excited to further my seed saving in the years to come and just see if I can develop an amazing plant that works very well in my area. But it's time for me to get ready to honestly go to bed. It's late, so I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you for joining me, and catch you on the next one.